Assalamu alaikum. Electrolysis is the process in which an electrical current is passed through a substance, usually liquids, to cause a non-spontaneous chemical change and/or reaction. The chemical change is when the substance gains or loses electrons. Metallic sodium and chlorine gas are produced by the electrolysis of molten sodium chloride. Electrolysis is used for many other things, such as production of many metals and nonmetals, such as aluminum, magnesium, chlorine, and fluorine. Electrolysis is commonly used for coating one metal with another. This is called electroplating. The object that is set to be coated is made the cathode, and the coating object is made the anode. This diagram shows the electroplating of a spoon, which is the cathode, that is being coated with silver. What are electrodes? An electrode is a solid conductor that carries electric currents into non-metallic solids, liquids, gases, or plasma. Electrodes are good conductors, but they don't always need to be metals. In the Hall-Héroult process to extract aluminum metal from aluminum, both the anode and the cathode were graphite. What are cathodes and anodes? Cathodes and anodes are where oxidation and reduction occur. The cathode is where reduction occurs, and the anode is where oxidation occurs, though it is not always this way. Whether an electrode acts as an anode or a cathode depends on the cell, or more specifically, the way the cell is operating. Cells. If a cell is switched from operating as a galvanic cell, outputting energy like a battery, to operating as an electrolytic cell, energy is input to the cell, the cathode will become the anode and vice versa. Conductors. Water on its own is not a very good conductor, so when performing electrolysis with water, it is best to add conductible substance, such as salt. Conductibility is also put into consideration when it comes to the electrodes. As I stated in slide 4, the Hall-Héroult process uses graphite for both electrodes due to it being a conductible mineral. Sodium metal is produced by using a carbon anode and an iron cathode. The Hall-Héroult process. Paul-Louis Toussaint Héroult was a French chemist who invented the electric arc current. It was invented independently by Héroult and almost simultaneously as American chemist Charles Martin Hall. In 1866, both chemists found that electrolysis of nearly pure aluminum oxide in molten cryolite, aluminum sodium fluoride, created a layer of melted aluminum at the bottom of the vessel. After some time, the chemists had come to a mutual agreement. For my experiment, I will be separating hydrogen and oxygen from water. I will connect a power source, a 9-volt battery, to the electrodes that are placed in the water. When the electrodes are connected to the power source, hydrogen will appear at the cathode, which in this case is a negatively charged electrode, and oxygen will appear at the anode, the positively charged electrode. In this clip, I am mixing salt to the water to make it a better conductor. The reason water becomes more conductive when mixed with salt is that the water molecules pull the sodium and the chlorine ions apart so that they can flow more freely. Sodium bonds with the hydrogen and oxygen to create sodium hydroxide. The chlorine and sodium then bond with like ions. I am using a glass jar. Glass is very effective as an insulator at room temperature. Glass, like most insulators, have electrons held tightly, which means that they cannot be shared between other atoms. I am now putting 2 metal knives held up by cardboard into the jar. They will work as my electrodes. As I stated in previous slides, electrodes can be any conductive metal or non-metal. As you can see, the very second the ends of the knives touch the terminals, the reaction begins. The hydrogen is reacting twice as much as the oxygen because in water there are 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen. H2O, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. The oxygen is being oxidized, which means it is losing electrons. The reason the water has changed color is because the knives are causing precipitate, solid substance formed during a reaction. If I used graphite instead of metal knives, there would be no creation of oxide. End of electrolysis. By the end of the reaction, the bonds between the hydrogen and oxygen in the water have been broken, as well as the bonds between the sodium and chlorine in the salt. As hydrogen and chlorine gases are escaping in the air, lye and oxide are the precipitate. What is pH? pH is a scale in chemistry that measures how acidic or basic a solution is. pH is on a range of 1 to 14. A pH level of less than 7 means acidity. A pH level of higher than 7 means a base or an alkaline. A pH is really a measure of how many hydrogen atoms flow freely in a solution. Lye is a very strong base and has a pH level of 13.0. Vinegar has a pH level of 2.0. When I pour the vinegar into the lye, it gives the water a neutral pH level of 7.0. This makes it safer to dispose.